1959. Charlie Munger meets Warren Buffett at a dinner party in Omaha. Two brilliant minds. Instant connection. But here's what nobody tells you about their legendary partnership. They disagree on almost everything. Buffett loves Coca-Cola. Munger thinks it's overpriced sugar water. Buffett avoids technology. Munger pushes him toward Apple. Buffett wants to buy cheap companies. Munger insists on buying great companies at fair prices. 60 years later, they've built the most successful investment partnership in history. Not despite their disagreements, but because of them. Most people choose partners who think like them, who validate their ideas, who make them feel smart and comfortable. This is a catastrophic mistake. When everyone in the room agrees with you, you're not in a boardroom, you're in an echo chamber. When your partner never challenges your thinking, you're not building a business, you're building a bubble. Munger understood something most people miss. Disagreement isn't the enemy of partnership. Agreement is. Because agreement feels good but doesn't make you better. Disagreement feels uncomfortable but forces you to think harder, dig deeper, and find truth instead of comfort. The strongest partnerships aren't built on harmony. They're built on productive conflict, respectful disagreement, intellectual sparring that sharpens both minds instead of dulling them. Today you'll discover why the smartest people intentionally choose partners who challenge them, how disagreement becomes a competitive advantage, and why your need for agreement might be destroying your potential for greatness. Meet David and Sarah, business school classmates, same background, same education, same worldview. They decide to start a company together. Every meeting is smooth, no arguments, no tension. They finish each other's sentences. Everyone says they have perfect chemistry. 2 years later, their company fails spectacularly. Why? They were so similar that they missed the same blind spots, made the same mistakes, overlooked the same opportunities. Their agreement wasn't strength, it was weakness multiplied. This is the agreement trap. When partners think too similarly, they create an illusion of validation while actually limiting their collective intelligence. Munger saw this everywhere. Boards full of yes-men who never challenged CEOs. Investment committees where everyone nodded along with the loudest voice. Partnerships where agreement was mistaken for wisdom. The psychology is simple. Agreement feels good because it confirms our existing beliefs. When someone agrees with us, our brain releases dopamine. We feel smart, validated, right. But this good feeling is dangerous because it stops us from questioning our assumptions. If everyone agrees with your idea, you never discover its flaws until it's too late. Disagreement, on the other hand, feels uncomfortable. When someone challenges our thinking, our brain interprets it as a threat. We become defensive. We resist. But this discomfort is valuable because it forces us to examine our reasoning, to find evidence for our beliefs, to consider alternative perspectives. Consider how most people choose business partners. They look for someone who gets them, someone who shares their vision, someone who thinks the same way. This feels natural and comfortable, but it's strategically stupid. Two people with identical strengths don't create a stronger partnership, they create redundancy. Two people with identical blind spots don't eliminate risk, they double it. Munger's approach was different. He specifically sought out people who thought differently than he did, not to fight with them, but to learn from them. Because he understood that the goal of partnership isn't to feel comfortable, it's to be more effective than you could be alone. Here's what made the Buffett-Munger partnership legendary. They never tried to think alike. Buffett is naturally optimistic. Munger is naturally skeptical. Buffett sees opportunities. Munger sees risks. Buffett focuses on what could go right. Munger focuses on what could go wrong. Most people would see this as incompatibility. Munger and Buffett saw it as their secret weapon. When Buffett got excited about an investment, Munger would ask the hard questions. What's the worst-case scenario? What assumptions are we making? What could destroy this business? When Munger was too pessimistic about an opportunity, Buffett would push back. What's the upside if we're right? Are we being too conservative? What's the cost of inaction? Neither dominated, neither deferred. They fought intellectually, respectfully, productively. The result? Better decisions than either could have made alone. Consider their investment in See's Candies in 1972. Buffett wanted to pay $25 million for a company with $4 million in tangible assets. By his traditional value investing metrics, this was crazy. Munger pushed him to think differently. It's not about the assets, he argued. It's about the brand, the customer loyalty, the pricing power. Buffett disagreed at first. But Munger's persistence forced him to reconsider his entire investment philosophy. They bought See's Candies. It became one of their most profitable investments and changed how they thought about quality businesses. If Buffett had chosen a partner who always agreed with him, he would have missed this evolution. If Munger had been a yes man, Berkshire would have remained a mediocre textile company. Their disagreements didn't weaken their partnership, they were their partnership. But here's the crucial point. They disagreed about strategies and tactics, but they agreed on fundamentals: integrity, long-term thinking, rational decision-making. This is the difference between productive disagreement and destructive conflict. Productive disagreement challenges methods while sharing values. Echo chambers don't just happen in politics and social media. They happen in boardrooms, investment committees, and business partnerships. And they're deadly. Theranos. Elizabeth Holmes surrounded herself with people who believed her vision so completely that nobody questioned whether the technology actually worked. Board members with impressive credentials but no medical expertise. Investors who got caught up in the story without examining the science. Employees who were fired for asking hard questions. Result? $945 million in investor losses and criminal fraud charges. What if Holmes had chosen a partner who disagreed with her? Someone who demanded proof instead of accepting promises? Someone who asked uncomfortable questions about the technology? The fraud might have been exposed years earlier, or better yet, never committed at all. Echo chambers form naturally because they feel good. When everyone agrees with you, you feel like a visionary. When nobody challenges your ideas, you feel like a genius. But this feeling is dangerous because it disconnects you from reality. Munger understood that the most dangerous person in any organization is someone who never hears no. Someone whose ideas are never challenged. Someone who mistakes agreement for validation. Because reality doesn't care about your feelings. Markets don't care about your confidence. Customers don't care about your vision. They care about results. And results come from decisions based on truth, not comfort. The echo chamber effect is especially dangerous for successful people because success makes it easier to find yes men. When you've made money, people assume you're smart. When you're in charge, people defer to your opinion. When you're powerful, people tell you what they think you want to hear. This is why so many successful people eventually fail spectacularly. Their early success insulates them from disagreement, which insulates them from reality. Munger's solution was radical. He actively sought out people who would challenge him, not to undermine him, but to sharpen him, because he knew that the alternative to uncomfortable truth is comfortable delusion. And delusion, no matter how comfortable, eventually collides with reality. Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, built the world's largest hedge fund on one principle: radical transparency. Every meeting includes someone whose job is to disagree. Every decision gets challenged by multiple perspectives. Every idea must survive rigorous debate before implementation. Employees are required to challenge their superiors, including Dalio himself. Most people would find this environment hostile. Dalio calls it meaningful work and meaningful relationships. Result? $160 billion in assets under management and decades of superior returns. This is the devil's advocate advantage. When you institutionalize disagreement, you systematically improve decision-making. But here's what most people miss. Effective disagreement isn't random arguing. It's structured challenge, designed to find flaws before they become disasters. Munger applied this principle throughout his career. Before making any major decision, he would actively look for reasons why it might be wrong. Not because he wanted to be negative, but because he wanted to be accurate. Consider how most investment decisions get made. Someone presents a bullish case. They show projections, highlight opportunities, explain why the investment will succeed. Everyone nods along. The decision gets made. The investment fails because nobody seriously considered what could go wrong. Munger's approach was different. For every bullish case, he demanded a bearish case. For every projection, he wanted worst-case scenarios. For every opportunity, he identified risks. This wasn't pessimism, it was preparation. Because when you understand what could go wrong, you can either avoid the investment entirely or structure it to survive negative outcomes. The devil's advocate advantage works because it exploits a fundamental flaw in human psychology: confirmation bias. We naturally look for information that confirms what we already believe. We ignore or dismiss information that contradicts our assumptions. This feels efficient because it allows us to make decisions quickly. But it's actually dangerous because it prevents us from seeing reality clearly. A good devil's advocate forces you to confront information you'd rather ignore, to consider possibilities you'd rather dismiss, to question assumptions you'd rather take for granted. This process is uncomfortable but invaluable. Because the goal isn't to be right about your original idea, it's to make the best decision possible. Professor Scott Page from the University of Michigan spent years studying team performance. His conclusion was startling. Cognitive diversity beats individual intelligence. A team of people with different thinking styles outperforms a team of people with identical high IQs. Not sometimes, consistently. Why? Because different perspectives reveal different solutions. Different backgrounds identify different problems. Different thinking styles avoid different mistakes. Munger understood this intuitively. That's why he never tried to clone himself in business partners. Instead, he specifically looked for people who thought differently. Optimists to balance his pessimism. Detail-oriented people to complement his big-picture thinking. Industry experts to fill his knowledge gaps. This approach requires intellectual humility, the recognition that you don't know everything and can't see everything. Most successful people struggle with this because their success makes them confident in their judgment. Why would they need someone else's perspective when their perspective has worked so well? But Munger knew that past success doesn't guarantee future accuracy. In fact, it often creates overconfidence that leads to future failures. Consider the difference between two investment approaches. Approach A: hire people who think like you. Build a team that agrees with your investment philosophy. Create harmony and alignment. Approach B: hire people who challenge your thinking. Build a team with diverse perspectives. Create productive tension and debate. Which approach feels more comfortable? Approach A. Which approach produces better results? Approach B. The cognitive diversity formula works because it prevents groupthink, the tendency for groups to make irrational decisions because everyone thinks alike. When everyone has the same background, education, and experiences, they make the same assumptions and miss the same opportunities. When team members have different backgrounds, educations, and experiences, they see different aspects of complex problems and identify solutions that homogeneous teams miss. But cognitive diversity only works if people actually express their different views. If diverse team members stay quiet to avoid conflict, you get the worst of both worlds: diversity without debate. This is why Munger didn't just choose diverse partners. He created environments where disagreement was expected, valued, and rewarded. Productive conflict isn't about winning arguments, it's about winning insights. Destructive conflict is personal, emotional, and ego-driven. Productive conflict is intellectual, evidence-based, and truth-seeking. Munger mastered the art of productive conflict by following specific principles. First, attack ideas, never people. When disagreeing with Buffett, Munger would say that analysis seems flawed rather than "you're wrong." Second, seek to understand before seeking to be understood. Before presenting his own view, Munger would make sure he fully grasped Buffett's reasoning. Third, change your mind when evidence demands it. Munger was famous for saying, "I was wrong," when new information contradicted his previous position. Fourth, focus on what's best for the shared goal, not what's best for your ego. Munger and Buffett cared more about making good investments than being right about specific disagreements. This approach turns disagreement from a threat into a tool. Consider how most business conflicts unfold. Person A presents an idea. Person B disagrees. Person A gets defensive and argues harder. Person B gets stubborn and digs in. The conversation becomes about winning rather than learning. Result: damaged relationships and poor decisions. Now consider Munger's approach. Person A presents an idea. Person B expresses concerns. Person A asks clarifying questions to understand the concerns. Together, they examine evidence and reason through implications. Result: stronger relationships and better decisions. The difference isn't in the disagreement, it's in the approach to disagreement. Productive conflict also requires what psychologists call psychological safety, the belief that you can express disagreement without negative consequences. If people fear that disagreeing will damage their relationships or careers, they'll stay quiet even when they see problems. Munger and Buffett created psychological safety by modeling productive disagreement. They showed that intellectual sparring strengthened rather than weakened their partnership. This gave others permission to challenge ideas without fear of retaliation. The result was an organization where the best ideas survived rigorous testing and the worst ideas were eliminated before they caused damage. Anti-fragile partnerships don't just survive disagreement, they grow stronger because of it. Fragile partnerships break under stress. Resilient partnerships survive stress. Anti-fragile partnerships use stress to become stronger. The Munger-Buffett partnership was anti-fragile because their disagreements forced continuous evolution. Every major disagreement led to new insights. Every intellectual conflict revealed new perspectives. Every challenge to conventional wisdom opened new possibilities. Consider their evolution from cigar butt investing to quality growth investing. Buffett's original approach was to buy cheap, mediocre companies and sell them when they reached fair value. Munger disagreed. He argued for buying great companies at reasonable prices and holding them forever. This disagreement lasted years, but instead of destroying their partnership, it evolved their strategy. The result? Berkshire Hathaway became one of the greatest investment companies in history. Building anti-fragile partnerships requires specific characteristics. Shared values, but different methods. You need to agree on fundamental principles while disagreeing on tactical approaches. Intellectual humility. Both partners must be willing to change their minds when evidence contradicts their beliefs. Long-term orientation. Short-term partnerships can't survive the discomfort of productive disagreement. Mutual respect. You must respect your partner's intelligence even when you disagree with their conclusions. Clear communication. Disagreements must be expressed clearly and specifically, not through hints or passive aggression. When these elements align, disagreement becomes a source of strength rather than weakness. The partnership develops what Munger called the ability to destroy your ideas rapidly instead of slowly when the occasion is right. This ability to change course quickly when new information emerges is what separates great partnerships from good ones. Most partnerships fail because they optimize for comfort instead of growth. They avoid disagreement to preserve harmony. But harmony without growth is stagnation, and stagnation, no matter how comfortable, eventually leads to irrelevance. The choice is yours. Build partnerships based on agreement and accept mediocre results. Or build partnerships based on productive disagreement and achieve extraordinary outcomes. Munger chose disagreement and built one of the greatest business partnerships in history. The question isn't whether you can handle disagreement. The question is whether you can afford to avoid it.